Survivors of the horror death camp Auschwitz have spoken about the global rise in anti-Semitism at the 80th Liberation Remembrance Service. And they've warned that it's the same hatred that led to the Holocaust in the first place. Among the audience were world leaders, royals, politicians, and 78 global television networks. Not, however, the ABC or SBS. News Corp's Europe correspondent Sophie Ellsworth was there, and I spoke to her a little earlier about what it was like to be on the ground for such a moving and solemn event. Here she is. Sophie Ellsworth, thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us a bit about what the commemorations have been like on the ground?
Yeah, great to be with you, Shari. Look, an incredibly emotional, moving ceremony here. That was yesterday here in Poland. We had dignitaries, world leaders, royals, many Holocaust survivors. The service lasted about 2 hours. Very harrowing stories. Too difficult, really, Shari, as we all know, to comprehend. But it was a very incredible experience to be here on the ground and to hear these horrifying tragedies that so many people went through, and reminding people, Shari, of what did happen here in World War II and making sure that we do not forget what happened.
Yeah, and we know that too many people, especially young people, don't know much at all about the Holocaust. Sophie, 3 of the Holocaust survivors gave really moving speeches, not only about their own personal stories, but they also spoke about the rise in anti-Semitism. What was their message?
Well, that was the underlying message here, Shari. It wasn't just the tales of the horrors that happened here at the Holocaust, during the Holocaust. It was also about the rise of anti-Semitism across the world, particularly given that we have the conflict in the Middle East. And the message was that anti-Semitism must be stamped out. That was the real takeaway from this, that moving beyond the commemoration, that the atrocities that happened here at the Holocaust cannot be repeated, and that this rise in anti-Semitism around the world must be stamped out.
Indeed, and this is the worst humanity has ever seen until, of course, October 7, and then we saw similar acts of atrocities, babies being murdered and killed. But Sophie, for you personally, walking through the concentration camp where more than 1 million Jews were murdered, can you tell us a bit about what that was like for you?
Well, Shari, it's just really hard to comprehend what did happen here. We know so much about it. We've read so much about it. We're reminded so much of what did happen. But when you're here and seeing it with your own eyes, it really is difficult to imagine what did happen here, but incredibly moving. And as you can see from behind us, a lot of these sites are very preserved, which is important so that people could come here and understand what did occur and help them understand so that this history is not erased, this history is not forgotten, and people remember the atrocities that did take place at these concentration and extermination camps in Europe.
Alongside the survivors, there were also world leaders who came together for this 80th commemoration of the liberation of Auschwitz, included King Charles. How did they react?
Well, like many people here, Shari, people watching all around the world, very emotional. How could you not be? These stories are heart-wrenching. They're too hard to even comprehend. We saw imagery of King Charles III, very emotional during the service. He's the first British monarch to actually come here to visit this site. So that was a very important moment as well. But, you know, there's no one that would walk away from here and not have, you know, emotions running through them to understand what did take place here, and that we must reflect on what happened. And as the messaging was at the commemoration service, Shari, atrocities that did take place here during World War II cannot be repeated.
We know our Foreign Minister Penny Wong was there. She's described it as a deeply moving experience. But she's been supporting anti-Israel policies at the United Nations and at in international forums. She's been publicly extremely critical of Israel. Israel that was born out of the Holocaust, Sophie.
Well, Shari, that's been obviously what has really taken the attention away from her visit is all the criticism that she has received. And as you know better than many people, the anger and the annoyance and frustration with the Jewish community that she was the representative here and that she was perhaps the wrong person given her stance on Israel. But she was obviously very defensive of that. She was here alongside Attorney General Mark Dreyfus, who we know is Jewish, and she was saying that they were the right members of the government to be here. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese was not here, and many would argue he should have been here because there were prime ministers and presidents from all around the world here in Poland for this very important event, Shari.
It is indeed, and thank you to you, Sophie, for covering it so beautifully during the week. Thanks so much for joining us. And just to end the show tonight, I'm going to leave you with the words of what one survivor said at the commemoration.
Our Jewish Christian values have been overshadowed worldwide by prejudice, fear, suspicion, and extremism. And the rampant anti-Semitism that is spreading among the nations is shocking.
It is indeed. Now, if you missed my report on how the police are handling anti-Semitism, head to the Sky News website.